You cancel the plan, you close the door, you make the same meal you made last Saturday, and instead of feeling that you have wasted the evening, something in you finally settles. The world has an explanation for this. You are getting old, you are becoming antisocial, you have lost your ambition. Perhaps. But if that were all it was, why does the quiet feel less like giving up and more like coming back? There is a kind of person who has always been here. They go by different names in different centuries. The cunning woman, the hermit, the witness, the seer, the exile. The world has tried more than once to be rid of them. The world has never managed it. If you carry one of these patterns, you already know. Today, the hermit, the one who discovers that an uneventful life can contain more life than a crowded one. And the question underneath it, why some people begin to crave what everyone else has taught them to fear. Boredom. You know the particular relief I mean. Nothing is happening. No one is expecting you. There is nowhere you have to be. The phone can stay where it is. Dinner can be ordinary. You might watch something you have already seen, walk the same route, sit in the same chair, make tea in the same cup. From the outside there is almost nothing to report, and that is precisely the point. We live in a culture that has quietly turned an interesting life into a moral achievement. Your weekend should contain something worth photographing. Your work should be progressing. Your body should be improving. Your friendships should be maintained. Your home should be transformed. Your hobbies should become skills. Your skills should become income. Even rest has acquired a performance review. Did you recover properly? Did you make good use of the day? Did you get outside? Did you practice gratitude? Did you optimize your sleep? There is almost nowhere left where a human being is allowed simply to exist without converting the existence into evidence. So when you begin wanting less, the obvious explanation is that something has gone wrong. Perhaps you are tired. Perhaps you have become introverted with age. Perhaps life has disappointed you enough that your ambitions have shrunk. These explanations deserve more respect than a fashionable rejection of them. Sometimes exhaustion really does make the world smaller. Sometimes withdrawal is depression. Sometimes people disappear because engaging with life has become painful. We should not turn every closed door into wisdom simply because solitude sounds poetic. But there is a detail those explanations fail to hold. Watch what happens when you finally get the quiet you have been craving. If you were merely depleted, rest would return you to the same life with your battery refilled. If you were merely avoiding people, being alone would mostly contain the relief of their absence. But for some people, something else happens. Thought returns, not thought as effort, thought as emergence. The thing you could not understand during the meeting makes sense while washing a plate. The decision you kept circling arrives while staring through a window. A feeling you had no language for begins quietly organizing itself while you walk a route you have walked 100 times before. You did not solve it. You made enough room for it to reveal itself. That difference matters, because perhaps the opposite of stimulation is not boredom. Perhaps the opposite of stimulation is space. And those are not the same thing. Modern life is unusually good at preventing empty space from forming. Stand in a queue and the phone appears. Wait for someone and the phone appears. Eat alone and something plays. Walk somewhere and something speaks into your ears. There was once an enormous amount of ordinary human life in which nothing new arrived. A journey, a fire, a field, mending something with your hands, watching weather move across a window, not meditation, not self-care, just intervals in which the mind was not being continually given another object. We have become so unused to those intervals that when one finally appears we call it boredom and rush to remove it. But look at what you do instead. You return to familiar things. The same music, the same chair, the same garden, the same film you already know the ending of, the same walk where nothing surprising is likely to happen. Why? The common answer is comfort. And it is true. Predictability does comfort the nervous system. Familiar surroundings ask less of attention than unfamiliar ones. Routine reduces the number of small decisions a day demands. But that still does not explain the deepest part. Because you are not only seeking comfort, you are seeking what does not interrupt you. That is a different need entirely. You have probably felt the distinction without naming it. You can spend an evening alone and still emerge exhausted if you have spent it moving between messages, feeds, headlines, videos, and other people's lives. Technically, you were alone. Psychologically, you were in a crowd. and you can spend an hour doing something almost absurdly uneventful and feel as though something inside you has returned to its proper place. The difference was never simply solitude, it was access. How much of the outside world had access to your attention? That question takes us somewhere more interesting than introversion. Because attention is not merely what you look at. Attention is the doorway through which the world enters you. Every unresolved conversation enters through it. Every demand, every face you read more closely than you meant to. Every atmosphere you notice. Every possibility you automatically turn over. Every unfinished thing. For the INFJ in particular, introverted intuition does not simply collect events. It looks for the pattern connecting them. That processing is often delayed. The room provides the material, solitude provides the meaning. You may not understand what happened while it is happening, you understand it later. Driving home, standing in the shower, folding clothes, lying awake after everyone else has stopped talking. The insight arrives after the stimulus leaves. That is why constant engagement can create a strange kind of internal congestion. More enters than can be metabolized. And eventually you stop craving excitement. You begin craving a day in which nothing else comes in. This is where the word boring begins to reveal how badly we have understood it. A boring life, in the way you mean it, may not be a life without depth. It may be a life with enough stillness for depth to become visible. Think carefully about the things you actually call boring. Making soup, watering plants, tidying a room slowly, sitting with a cat, walking without a destination, reading 20 pages and falling asleep, watching rain. None of these things is empty. They are low in novelty. That is not the same condition. Novelty keeps pulling attention outward. Familiarity lets attention fall inward. And once it falls inward, the thing you have been carrying all week finally has somewhere to go. That is the thread. It leads somewhere specific. The hermit has always understood something the modern world has almost forgotten. Withdrawal is not valuable because nothing happens there. Withdrawal is valuable because something happens there that cannot happen while the door is constantly open. This is the hermit's territory, not escape from life, the chamber in which life is processed. Once you see that, another question opens immediately. What happens when the chamber becomes a fortress? Because the hermit has a shadow, every gift does. There is a moment when protecting your peace can begin to protect something else. Fear, disappointment, resentment. The wish never again to be inconvenienced by another human being. And from the inside, the two can look remarkably similar. You cancel the invitation, you feel relief, you stay home, the door closes. But what happened underneath? Did the silence restore you, or did the silence prevent something from reaching you? I want you to hold that distinction carefully because it matters more than whether your calendar looks full. Healthy solitude eventually gives something back. Clarity, curiosity, patience, work, affection, the desire to return. Avoidance does something different. It makes the world progressively more expensive. The invitation feels harder next time. The journey becomes more trouble. The message sits unanswered longer. What began as recovery slowly becomes a border you are afraid to cross. The hermit's old wisdom was never simply to leave. It was leave and return. The lantern matters because the hermit brings something back from the dark. Otherwise he is only a man in a cave. That is the shadow the romantic version of solitude often forgets. The quiet life is not sacred because nobody can reach you. It becomes sacred when the quiet restores the part of you capable of reaching others without disappearing inside them. I have watched people confuse these two forms of withdrawal for years. One leaves solitude larger, the other leaves it smaller. One begins wanting to make something, understand something, tend something, speak to someone. The other begins negotiating with the world to make sure nothing unpredictable ever enters again. They can wear the same clothes, sit in the same room, cancel the same Saturday plan. But underneath they are moving in opposite directions. So perhaps the real question was never whether you are becoming boring. It was whether the quiet is making you more yourself. That is a much harder question, and a far more useful one, because you may discover that the life you secretly want is not particularly impressive from the outside. Fewer obligations, fewer performances, a smaller circle, work that matters, people with whom silence is possible, a home you can disappear into without disappearing from yourself, enough routine that your attention is not spent on trivia, enough solitude that your own thoughts can finish arriving, That life may never photograph particularly well. There may be weekends in it that produce no stories at all. But the absence of spectacle is not the absence of meaning. The hermit knew that long before an algorithm rewarded human beings for remaining visible. The cave was never empty. That was where the lantern was lit. So if you find yourself longing for a life that looks quieter than the one you were told to want, do not rush to diagnose the longing. Look at what the quiet produces. Does it return you to the world clearer? Does it return you kinder? Does it make your own mind audible again? Then perhaps you are not withdrawing from your life. Perhaps you are finally removing enough noise to find out which parts of it were yours. And if the silence has begun to close rather than open you, notice that too. The hermit's wisdom is not permanent disappearance. It is rhythm, outward, inward, return. The world enters. The hermit carries it somewhere quiet. Meaning forms. The lantern comes back. That is the pattern. Not a boring life. A life with enough unoccupied space for something real to happen inside it. If this has landed where it needed to, you may already know what comes next. There are 7 Sigma INFJ archetypes, and each one carries a different gift, a different burden, a different mythic responsibility. The link in the description will take you to a free assessment that reveals yours. It takes about 3 minutes. The answer tends to land harder than people expect. And if you want to keep walking these threads with me, into the deeper psychology of the Sigma INFJ, into the archetypes the world has forgotten how to name, subscribe. There are far older and stranger things still to uncover. Until next time, find your power, know your myth,